All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started. First, I want everyone to know that this campaign has overcome all of the experts, all of the so-called political prognosticators. They've been wrong every step of the way. And this campaign in our last 4 days will be crucial to the state's future. And everyone needs to double down, triple down, do everything they possibly can, because this is an absolutely winnable race. And I think when I show you some of the polling numbers, and then show you the ballot returns, you'll see why this is a winnable race, and it's going to come down to how many voters we are able to turn out. This is a razor-thin election. It'll boil down to whether Newsom can turn out his votes in the remaining days or whether we turn out our votes. So with that, let's get underway. First, let me tell you, the polling has not changed in this race. You will see that a few weeks ago, the media was all in a flutter about the race for the recall being a dead heat. LA Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, Sacramento Bee, all the TV networks, all were touting a variety of polls showing a dead heat race. Now, in the last 4 or 5 days, they come out with new polls showing, oh, Newsom's got it. He's got it in the bag. I don't buy it. People don't change their mind that quickly. Certainly not about Gavin Newsom. Our own internal polling shows that this really is a race about who turns out, who shows up to vote. Democrats right now in the state of California have a 22% edge in voter registration over Republicans. And even with full turnout, our polling shows that this is a tight race. 50% no, 46% yes, undecided 4. And typically undecided will break against the incumbent. But we're not seeing a full turnout race. Let me repeat that. We are not seeing a turnout of all of the voters. Not all voters are turning out. In fact, in a moment, you'll see why Gavin Newsom actually has a problem that he has to try to fix in the last 4 days of the campaign. We also have a problem, but our problem is more easily fixed than his. Suppose that we turn out a few more Republicans than our normal natural share of the election, and Newsom actually falls short of his normal natural share of turnout. Well, take a look at the numbers there. 53% yes, no 44%, undecided 3. So when you look at the polls that are out there, when you look at actual turnout, because we know what types of ballots have been returned so far, you have to look not at the overall numbers, but you have to look at what the total percentage turnout is of the election. What is the composition of the turnout? What percentage or share do Republicans have? What's the share of Democrats? What's the share of independents? What are the shares of key demographic groups that Newsom tends to do better with, such as younger voters, or even some would argue Latino voters? Then you have to look at how are Democrats voting versus how are Republican how are they voting and breaking down, as well as how are the independents breaking. So let me just share with you a couple things about these polls, and then we'll talk about what we have to do in the last 4 days of the election. Survey USA. This is the LA Times poll. It's the ABC News poll. It is the Union Tribune poll. They came out yesterday. 54% voting no, 41% voting yes, 5% undecided. That's a 13-point deficit for the Republicans, for the pro-recall forces. Well, this same poll a month ago showed that 51% were voting yes, and only 40% were voting no. 9% were undecided. Now, what did I tell you a month ago when that poll came out? I said, I don't believe it. I don't believe we have a 9-point edge. I think this is a race that can be won by either side, and it's going to boil down to turnout. Told you that then, I'm telling you that now. But let's suppose for a moment that we look at this poll and say, all right, we buy it. in order to buy this poll, that means that the margin swung by 24%. Remember, we had an 11-point lead. Now we have a 13-point deficit. So the margin switched by 24%. Or from a raw standpoint, a full 14% of the voters changed their minds. They went from a yes to a no, and an undecided to a no. I don't for a moment think Californians have changed their mind about Gavin Newsom. What may change is turnout. Now let's look at the turnout in the Survey USA poll. Survey USA's turnout is fatally flawed. Whereas in August, with the poll that was tied, they showed relatively low turnout. Now they're predicting an 88% turnout of voters. Well, you know what? In the presidential election, we only had 77%. So are you trying to tell me that 11% more people are going to turn out in this recall election than in the presidential election in November of 2020? That's what they're trying to tell you. But the answer is no, that's not going to happen. Right now, we're on pace for just 50% turnout. Also, take a look at those numbers for conservatives and Republicans. Survey USA's poll shows 15% of Republicans are voting to keep Gavin Newsom. 15% of Republicans voting no. 20% of self-identified conservatives in the Survey USA poll are saying, oh, I'm going to vote no on Gavin Newsom's recall. Do you really have 1 out of 5 conservatives saying that they love Gavin Newsom? No. So this poll is flawed, and I could go through every one of the polls that they're touting right now. And we have similar methodological anomalies that you see. But you know what? Let's not talk about polls. How about we talk about actual ballots returned? Because guess what? Every morning I get an update from our campaign team of actual ballots that have been turned in. Because we do that to see how we are doing with turnout ourselves, but we also take people off the list. Once they return a ballot, we take them off our calling list and our knocking list. Here are the actual ballots. You're going to love this. Total turnout in 2020 on this day, 5 days out of an election. Total turnout in 2020 was 42%. You know what it is for 2021's recall? 30%. So in other words, turnout is down by about a quarter, about 25% reduced turnout from 2020. That means that the likely turnout in the recall election is probably going to be about 50%, maybe closer to 60%. It's not going to be the 88% that Survey USA and the IGS poll and the Trafalgar poll and, what was the other one? The PPIC. All of those polls show massive turnout. We're not seeing it. Not seeing it at all. We're looking at actual ballot returns, not phone calls, but actual ballot returns. They are way behind where we were in 2020. Oh, even better, look under the hood. Democrat voters, in 2020 at this point, they were 55% of the ballots had been returned by Democrats. Today, for 2021, it's 52%. Oh, let me get a number for you on that. Democrats have returned 1.4 million fewer ballots compared to the same time in 2020. That is a lot. As a result, we don't expect them to have 55% turnout. We don't expect them to even keep the 52% share that they have right now. We expect them to be about 47 to 48% of the share. Republican voters, right now they're 25, well, in 2020, they were 22% of the share of the vote. Right now, we're doing better. So Democrats are doing worse. We're doing better in terms of share. We're 25% of the vote. Now, we are still short 360,000 Republican votes compared to where we were in the 2020 election. Will they show up? Well, that's going to depend upon what you do in the next 4 days. But there are 360,000 Republican voters that had already voted by this point in the 2020 election that have not yet voted, and yet we're still a higher share of the recall vote than the Democrats are. In order for us to win, we need the 33 to 34% share. And by the way, that's 3 to 8% higher than the polls are projecting right now. And I think we are on track to get 33 to 34% of the share if we are able to turn out the vote that we want. Now, notice those numbers. If the Democrats get 47 to 48% of the share, and we're at 33 to 34%, the delta, the difference is 14%, right? Let's go back and look at this. Oh, 14% turnout, Democrat edge. Our polling shows we win. So it's not what the raw opinion is in these polls of yes or no. It boils down to who's returning their ballots. And if we can turn out more of our voters than Newsom, even though we're a smaller share, we are very competitive. Let me tell you where Newsom has his problems, and he knows he's got problems here, okay? Latino voters at 2020 general election right now, it was 19% of the share of votes were from Latinos. Today, for the recall, it's only 17% share for Latinos. That's 602,000 less Latino votes. As a result, we only expect Latinos to make up about 18% of the vote. That's 5 to 10 percentage points raw, less than the polls are calculating right now. How about younger voters? What do they say? If you're not young and liberal, you didn't have a heart. If you're not old and conservative, you never developed your brain. Younger voters are not turning out for Newsom right now. He's got a problem with younger voters. At this point in the general election, 19% of 18 to 34-year-olds had returned their ballots. Right now in the recall, only 15% of the votes are from 18 to 34-year-olds. We expect about 18% share for the 18 to 34-year-olds. And guess what? That's 8 to 10% lower than what we're seeing in these polls. Here's the bottom line. The polls are either, the most kind thing I can say about the polls is that they're just wrong because their turnout is wrong. I suspect these polls are intentionally thumb on the scale to depress Republican votes and make us demoralized. We've seen that happen in 2016 and 2020 where they put out phony polls towards the end, and then suddenly the race was far closer than the media was expecting and reporting. I believe this is an actual strategy by the media to try to depress and demoralize Republican votes. I don't think it's going to work, and we got to get our votes out. Here are the targets. We actually have a list of voters we're going after. What do we need to do in the next 4 days? We need to go after that list. Now, there are 3.6 million Republican voters still not voting in this election. 3.6 million Republican voters still have not voted. We expect a lot of them will vote without our help. They're always going to vote. They're perfect voters. They're 4 out of 4 voters. If the election were on Christmas Day, they would still vote. Now, of the 3.6 million voters that have not voted yet who are Republican, we are worried about only 800,000. Of that 800,000, by the way, 360,000 we know have not voted yet. See that? We know that those 800,000, some of them are not voting as of today. So those 800,000 are the people we're going after. We're not going after 3.7 million Republican voters. We're going after only 800,000 low propensity Republicans. They need to be motivated. We also have 176,000 unregistered Republican voters statewide. And we also have a target of 2.2 million independent voters who lean towards our direction. We think most of those are going to show up. But what we really need to do is go after the low propensity Republicans, the 800,000 Republicans that still need to be motivated because we know they're 100% a vote for us. We have to educate those voters because a lot of them have not been paying attention. So remember, when you knock on their door, when you call, when you talk to them, remind them, get in your ballot. Do not wait. If you lost your ballot, you can still demand a ballot. You can still go in and get a ballot. Anyone who is legally eligible to vote can still vote in this election, whether you have a ballot or not. Show up at the polling station and let them know that you want a ballot. You fill out a form, they give you a provisional ballot. Remind them to vote yes on the first question. I know it seems obvious, but it's not. You have to vote yes on recall, and that is the main thrust of your focus is make sure they know they can fill in the bubble yes on recall. I don't mind if they vote for some other candidate besides the one that you like. We all have our own preferences. We are looking at the polling, and right now a Republican candidate is way ahead of all the other candidates. That's Larry Elder. Again, I'm not endorsing. I'm just sharing data. But I know a lot of people like John Cox. They like Kevin Kiley, etc. Whoever you like, obviously. You can vote for them. But the most important issue right now is yes on recall. That's where we're having the challenge. That's what we have to win. So yes on recall is the most important question for people to focus on. How are we going to reach these 800,000 people? Call, walk, text. Call, walk, text. Call, walk, text. We need you to download our i360 campaign app and get credentials so that you can get access to this list. Chances are you'll have about 30 voters on that list of 800,000 that are in your immediate neighborhood. Those 30 voters, you need to go knock on their door. I know no one likes knocking on doors. No one likes walking. You know what? Your state depends upon it. The future of California depends upon you knocking on 30 doors this weekend. Again, who are we targeting in the 800,000 are the lazy Republicans. Now, if we can get through those lazy Republicans, we're going to add in those independents that we think may be on our side but are less likely to vote. And then only if we have time will we go after Democrats that have already indicated they're going to vote yes on recall. How do you get your materials? Well, the phone script is already in the app. But for walking door to door, I would prefer that you have a door hanger. It's okay if you just knock on the door without any material. Do not be discouraged if you don't have a door hanger or material. A knock on the door, a personal, chat with someone is certainly helpful. But door hangers are helpful because you can leave it behind if no one is answering the door. So there are two options. Number one is you can pick up door hangers. These hangers are available through your local county Republican Party. But please call ahead of time to make sure the office is open and they still have supply. Obviously, in Southern California, we have a lot of locations with the door hangers already. The headquarters for Reform California is in Escondido. The county party is in Mission Valley. Either of those locations are great if you live in San Diego County. In Orange County, the locations are some of the congressional offices, the campaign offices, as well as the county party headquarters in Tustin. But call your county local party headquarters first. If you don't get door hangers through them, we can always print the door hanger off at home. And let me share with you how to do that. You go to the website, Yes on Recall. Go to the website, scroll down below, right above the TV ad that we're running, is click here to download and print Gavin Newsom talking points. And that's what you print off on your home computer, home printer. If you have 30 homes, print 30 off. It's black and white, 8.5 by 11. It's simple paper, super easy to do. Just take that door to door, and it gives you something to leave behind if you need to. While I'm here, let me show you again. Here's the poll, the Survey USA poll, where I can look at the numbers underneath and how they came up with their overall number, and that's how I know. Look, they say 15% of Republicans are voting against the recall. I'll eat my hat if that happens. Conservatives, 21% of conservatives voting for are supporting Gavin Newsom. Not happening. You all are liars. You all are incompetent at doing polling. It's not happening. So that's why when I tell you about these polls versus actual ballot returns, this is the sort of garbage that the media runs, and they don't expect people to be looking underneath the hood, but we do. So I just wanted to show you that while we were there. You can get your materials and can then go door to door. It's so important that you do the door to door, but if you can't do door to door, at least do the phone calls. The talking points are super simple. We have 5 key talking points. Most people, you don't even have to get to these because we're really not going after undecided voters. We're going after people that just simply are our base voters that just haven't returned a ballot. So they just need to be told that you got to return the ballot. This race can be won. Gavin Newsom's a bad guy. You know that. I know that. Vote yes on recall. That's all you have to say. Pretty simple. But the main points we're making is the cost of living in California is too high. Crime is skyrocketing. Schools are failing. They're not only not open usually because of COVID, but even when they are open, they don't teach our kids what they need to know. Homelessness is skyrocketing, and Newsom is corrupt. He gives privileges to his buddies, his backers, his special interest campaign contributors. He does one thing for himself and tells us to do something totally different. Those 5 points are on the door hanger on the website. But really, our message right now, you're running out of time. Return your ballot today. Let me talk about ballot integrity, election integrity. This is something that's super important. First and foremost, I know a lot of you are saying, I'm going to wait to walk my ballot in. Well, if you walk your ballot in on election day, you're likely going to contribute to a long line. And that means that someone who's not as motivated as you, I don't worry about you voting. I know you're motivated because you're sitting on a Zoom call at noon on Friday, you know? I worry about the low propensity Republican, one of those 800,000s, driving up in their car. Maybe they got the kids in the car, or maybe they're late for work and they see a long line out of the polling station. I'm like, that's it. I'm out of here. So what I would encourage you to do is every county right now will be opening voting centers that are exactly the same capability as your polling location on election day. Voting centers are opening throughout the state. And what you can do is go online to your county registrar of voters office. You can identify where your voting center is, and you can go in. And you can either drop off your ballot, or if you want a fresh ballot, you can specifically ask for a fresh ballot. Please consider doing that so that we don't contribute to long lines on election day. Anyone can walk into a polling station or a voting center in the next 4 days, even if they're unregistered, and demand a ballot. Anyone. So if someone says, oh, I forgot to register, doesn't matter. You can show up and vote. That's what the Democrats have said. So that's what we're going to do. So everyone who wants to vote yes on recall, there's no excuse for them not to vote. They can totally show up and vote. If you mailed in your ballot, or if someone drops it in the mail, I would rather have the ballot dropped in the mail than you saying, oh, I trust you to show up on election day. Now, get that ballot, either harvest it and you sign your name at the top of the envelope, you know, and return it on their behalf, or you just tell them to drop it in the mail. I know some of you don't trust the Postal Service. Well, guess what? You can track that ballot. You can track it to make sure it arrived at the registrar of voters office. And there is a barcode that the Postal Service is required under law to scan when they take possession of the ballot, and it tracks it through the system. If there are any problems that you encounter, if someone says, I have a dead person's ballot, I have a ballot for someone, I don't even know who the hell they are, they mailed it to me and I don't know why I got it, a ballot for someone who moved away long ago, a duplicate ballot. Some of our people are getting duplicate and triplicate ballots. Please do not vote more than once. But any problem ballots, report to problemballots.com. We are preparing a whole case file in case we have to do litigation on the lack of integrity in the election. So report the problems to problemballots.com. The most important thing for you to do is to download the app. I need you all to call this weekend. I need you to walk this weekend. I need you to do it multiple times if you have the bandwidth and commitment. The way to get your app is to go and email help@yesonrecall.org or call 619-786-8019. That's help@yesonrecall.org or 619-786-8019. The help desk will give you your credentials, your name, your username, and your password. You then use that to download the app, and then you can contact the specific voters we're going after. Do not sign wave this weekend. It does not help us. Repeat, do not sign wave this weekend. It does not help us. all you're doing is reminding one of those Democrat voters that it's election. And you're reminding them to go vote. We don't want to do that. We only want to go after our 800,000 low propensity Republicans to make sure that they return their ballots. And if we can get through that list a couple times, then we'll add on the independents and other Democrats who we know are supporting us.